American officials overseas are being attacked. AEC Incorporated is going to provide them the training so that they can avoid, evade, or counter those attacks.
Thank you for your time today and this opportunity to tell you about AEC's highly specialized experiential training in personal security. We offer services in route analysis, observation skills, situational awareness, evasive and tactical driving, and surveillance detection. AEC stands for Avoid, Evade, Counter. Our target market is the intelligence community, and integrated beyond the intelligence community, that includes military, intelligence, and law enforcement agencies at the federal, state, and local levels, but our initial efforts will be with the intelligence community. I'd like to spend the next 15 minutes showing you why AEC should be awarded first place in this competition. My name is Kate Komisky. I'm an MBA candidate here at the George Washington University. I was an operations officer with the CIA. Shortly after 9/11, I deployed overseas and served in the Near East, conducting counterterrorism operations in support of the U.S. government's global war on terror. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Dick Bradford.
My name's Dick Bradford. I recently retired from 35 years of government service. The first 12 of those years were as an Army Special Forces and Infantry officer, and the last 23 years as a CIA operations officer. Together we have 48 years of experience in the national security field. I'd like to talk to you about what our agenda is going to be today. First, I'm going to show you an attack timeline showing you how many attacks there have been, just a sample of the number of attacks that we have had recently against Americans. We'll talk about a specific case study, that of Larry Foley, who was a U.S. Agency for International Development officer in Amman, Jordan, when he was brutally assassinated. We'll give you a little bit of a demo of the training that we're going to offer, a small part of that. We'll talk about the offerings that we have as far as training is concerned. And then Kate will talk about the marketing plan, the financial forecast, the management team, and a recap as we go into questions and answers. You'll notice on the timeline that the first 5 of these attacks have occurred in the last 6 months. In April, this month, at the consulate in Nuevo Laredo, a bomb was thrown onto the patio. The month before that, in Ciudad Juarez, at the consulate there, Leslie Enriquez, I'm sorry, not at the consulate, on the streets, but Leslie Enriquez, an employee of the consulate, and her husband were brutally ambushed and killed, leaving their toddler alive in the back seat of the car. In December of last year, at Coast Base, 7 CIA officers were assassinated by a double agent suicide bomber. You're all familiar the same month with the Northwest Airlines Flight 253, which an al-Qaeda representative attempted to blow that plane up as it landed in Detroit. In October 2008, there was a small arms and grenade attack against the U.S. consulate in Monterrey, Mexico. So that's just a sample of the things that have happened. The case here goes back another 8 years from now, but it's important for several reasons, and I want to highlight that case. This is Lawrence Foley, who was assassinated on the 28th of October, 2002. He was, as I said before, an employee of the United States Agency for International Development. He had spent his entire life helping people. A couple tours in the Peace Corps. He had been a counselor for troubled youth, and he had, of course, worked for international development. His whole life was devoted to helping other people. By all accounts, a very nice man, a husband, father of 2, grandchildren of 3 children. This is not the attacker, but this is a Jordanian policeman in the position of one of the attackers as Lawrence Foley walked out of his house just a few steps from his house to his car on his way to work. At the time that he normally left for work, one of the 2 assassins was hiding right here, right behind his car. This is an important case, not because it's atypical. It's an important case because it was this case that the State Department determined would be the impetus for requiring personal security training for all American officials who travel overseas, including the intelligence community. So, I want to talk a little bit about the training we provide. Let's assume for the case of this example that you work in a hostile environment and live in that same environment. If this is the George Washington University campus, we'll say that you live up here at the St. Gregory Hotel and Residence, and that you work here in the building we're in right now, Duquesne Hall. Most people would find the shortest, quickest, easiest route to work, and they would take that route every day. How many of you take the same route every day when you go to work? Yeah. It's normal, isn't it? And we normally leave at the same time to go to work. And that's what Larry Foley did. So let's look at a possible route. And there's some anomalies here because of one-way streets, something else that has to be taken into account. Let's say that this is the route that you've chosen. You leave home up there at the top of the map at the same time every day. You take this route every day and you come here to Duquesne Hall. If I'm an attacker, I can attack you anywhere along that route, a place of my choice. So you've given me a wide open field. If, however, you vary your route, let's add a second route. Let's say instead of taking the first route, sometimes I take that second route. Now my chances of catching you on either one of those two routes is reduced by 50%. So you have a better chance because I won't know exactly where you'll be. And we can add a third route. We can add as many routes as are possible to reduce the chances of you being attacked by me. However, you'll notice that both at the residence and at the place of work, some of these lines overlap. In other words, no matter which of these three routes you take, you're always going to be in that rectangle at the top when you leave home. You're always going to be at this rectangle in the bottom as you arrive at work. So I can attack you at either of those places. But let's look at the workplace. Duquesne Hall has entrances from 4 different streets leading in here. So you're not really all that predictable. Let's say that you park in the parking lot across the street every day. You've now made it 2 routes, from home to the parking lot, from the parking lot to Duquesne Hall. So now I have another area of predictable travel where I could be able to attack you. Another advantage to you here is that there are a lot of people work around this area. So there are a lot of witnesses that I would like to avoid if I'm the bad guy. So looking at all those factors, I'm likely to attack you in the morning near your home as you leave for work, because most of us are very, very predictable at that time. These are some of the courses that we're going to offer. Kate mentioned some of those: route analysis, observation skills, situational awareness, evasive and tactical driving, surveillance detection. We'll go through a number of case studies like the Lawrence Foley case. And you'll notice that at the very end of my list is countering. We're avoid, evade, counter. Counter is at the last of our list. Most personal security courses put it at the beginning of the list. If you sign up for a personal security course, you assume you're going to get some kind of martial arts or firearms work, something like that. Those are counters. Those are the things that you would use if you failed to avoid and failed to evade. So we're going to teach the most important things, the greatest emphasis on the most important things. Avoid the problem in the first place. A lot of training also offers very high-profile countering techniques, motorcades, convoys, that kind of thing. We're not talking about that. We're talking about very low-profile protection, whereas rather than our protection being the deterrence of some threat, our protection is the low-profile nature of how we do it. In order to do this, we're partnered with ORT Incorporated. It's a woman-owned small business in Middlesex County, Virginia, run by the co-founder, who is a former Navy SEAL. It provides classroom facilities, on-road and off-road, on-road purpose-built for this training, and off-road facilities as well.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Dick. As I said earlier, we're looking at offering our services to the military, intelligence, and law enforcement agencies at the federal, state, and local levels, but we would like to focus initially on the intelligence community. These are the SEALs of the intelligence community members. It's a coalition of 17 agencies and organizations in the executive branch that are overseen by the ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. That's the SEAL on the left-hand side of the community. So you would probably like to know, is there really demand out there for the training that we're talking about offering? Well, in fact, there is. In the last 6 months, there have been 8 solicitations that have been put out on FedBizOps, the federal government website, for these such solicitations. And they asked for anti-terrorism training, surveillance detection, defensive driving, as well as weapons familiarization. We saw solicitations from, here we have Department of Navy. This is just last month, and these are 3 separate solicitations from Department of Navy. We also saw solicitations from Department of Army, as well as Department of State, including DIA. They had their own solicitation, and that was to provide training to not only the defense attachés, but the spouses of defense attachés. So there is definitely a need, and this was only in a 6-month period. So I'd just like to take a moment and talk about AEC's mission statement. We take this incredibly seriously. We're talking about lives. AEC, our mission statement is AEC trains its clients to avoid, evade, counter threats and attacks so that our clients can stay alive to carry out their mission another day. Dick and I, we're from the agency. We've served in high threat and low threat areas. We've employed these skills that we're talking about out in the field, so we intimately know what these agencies need and how important it is and how critical it is, not only to their safety, but also the security of their operations and their missions. So how are we going to enter the market? So the unique selling proposition that we have is actually based on what we call 4 corners of the car. So if you take a course, one of the courses in evasive and tactical driving, what they teach you is to know the 4 corners of your car, literally. Because there might be some time that you're in some godforsaken place in a dark alley driving, and the roads get narrow. And if you really know the 4 corners of your car, you may know that you've got 6 inches or maybe 4 inches on either side, and if there's a need for you to get away or maneuver, you know you can. I know here in the States, I mean, we've got our lanes, and if anybody encroaches on that, we kind of get a little upset. So you really need to know the 4 corners of your car. So the 4 corner principles of our unique selling proposition is the first one, is that we offer training. We are exclusively focused on training. There are other companies out there that do offer training, but they also offer services in intelligence analysis, operational support, logistics support, IT security. They runs the gamut. Training is just one thing that they do. Training is our core competency. Training is what we do. This is what we're experts in, and that's what we want to convey to our clients. The other core principle is that our trainers are certified trainers with field experience. Again, we've got competitors out there. They also have field experience trainers. But generally, you'll find that their trainers are not certified trainers. So we want to take it up at the next level, and we want not only are our trainers field experience, they also have been out there, they've operated in these environments, and they know how important it is, but they're also certified in delivering this training. And we take that very seriously as well. Now, the third corner is the fact that, as I mentioned, Dick and I, we've served overseas, and we understand intimately what these clients need. And I think that's very important in this market space. It's an unspoken word. It's a little bit of bona fides where you may not even be able to get a meeting, or people may not take you seriously, but if they hear, particularly if you're talking to another agency person, okay, so you're CIA? Okay. So you get the secret handshake. And the 4th corner principle is it's best practices, commercial best practices in program management and contractor relations. Because we recognize also that not only are those officials that are going through our training, they're our clients, these students, but it's the contracting officer who's managing the client. Sometimes a lot of these companies, our competitors, they forget about that. And we would like to make the contracting officer's job seem effortless. And we think that we can do that by also offering program management professionals, again, recognizing the value of a certification, somebody that's trained in a very important skill set. And so this is how we plan to position our company as we enter the market space. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about our business model. So let's kick off with the revenue streams. We've identified 3 revenue streams for our company. The first one would be training, the second one would be curriculum development, and the third one would be consulting. Now, as I mentioned, we're a training company, so the consulting services would be focused in training capacity. Training revenue, that's our primary revenue stream. The others would be supplemental, initially also to get us off the ground in the beginning stages. Also, you'll see that there are trends in government contract and when contracts are issued, when services are delivered, and the government generally shuts down come the holiday season. Things slow down, people go on vacation. It just comes to a standstill almost. And So we anticipate that this will also happen. We probably won't be delivering training over the holiday season, and so we'd like to supplement our revenue streams with the services of curriculum development as well as the consulting services. So if I could talk a little bit about the financial forecasts. In our first year, we're forecasting sales revenues of $718,000. Now this is actually based on, and I'm just going to jump down here, because I do want to point out, it's based on the assumption that when we win a contract, two, it's a contract that's asking seven programs in the first year, and I'm defining a program as either a 1-week or 2-week module of the portfolio of 20-some courses that we have. But of course, it really is going to be dependent upon what's in the contract statement of work, what exactly does the client want, and we can customize our offering. So if I can just jump back up, we've got high gross profit margins of 30 to 40%, and our break-even point is it's about the 8th month of operations, and that would be in January of next year. So the cost drivers of our company, predominantly we're a payroll-centered company, so labor costs will have the biggest impact on our cost structure. Now, that's predominantly our trainers and our program managers. We will have management costs, management salaries, those are fixed. We also have the training equipment, which generally would be non-recurrent, until as we grow, and then there are more offerings. Of course, we'll need to purchase more equipment, but it's not something that we need to do every time we're delivering a course. We'll also have training materials, and then we also would like to acknowledge that there is, even though we have a portfolio of 20 courses that are ready to be delivered today, we can also develop more courses, and we actually have some that we already have in mind, courses that we would like to develop and offer to the community. So to offset those labor costs, initially what we plan to do is hire independent contractors. And we recognize that there's pros, cons about this, but we also recognize that this is one of the things that we need to do to get into the market. And with that, when we do achieve critical mass, then we'll look at hiring full-time trainers. Moving along. Investment in AEC. Dick and I, we are fortunate enough that we can bootstrap this company. I'm going to put up $10,000. Dick has already contributed intellectual capital in terms of the courses that have already been developed. If we are awarded the honor of first place and the $20,000 prize, then we will put that $20,000 towards the startup of AEC Incorporated. And that decision would enable you to help save American lives too by delivering AEC training. So the management team, this is what we want to offer. Are we really qualified to do it? Yes, we are. As Dick said, that between the two of us, we have over 48 years of experience in national security. We both have come from the CIA. We've both been trained by the CIA as operations officers. We've both operated out in the field in high-threat and low-threat areas, so we know what it's like. We have, actually, Dick has years of experience as a trainer. With the agency, Dick was a certified instructor. He actually developed CIA's personal security training program that all officers who were deployed overseas had to take before deployment. So Dick, you're looking at our training. He's the trainer. What I bring to the table is that as an MBA candidate here at the George Washington University, I'm bringing business acumen. Yes, I have my operational experience, but I really want to apply business to this company. I want to stand up, we both do want to stand up our own company and start AEC Incorporated. We've identified one member of the board initially. It's my husband, and he is a special agent retired from Department of State Diplomatic Security. And he has over 33 years of service in the Department of State's Diplomatic Security. He has served overseas as a regional security officer in Warsaw, Poland. He served in Nicosia, Cyprus, and he's also served at the Vatican in Rome. He's also done TDYs on protection assignments overseas in Haiti and Iraq and Afghanistan. And he's also served as protection details. He's been assigned as a special agent in Washington, D.C. and New York in protection details for the U.S. Secretary of State as well as the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. So between the three of us, and this is only one board member that we've identified, we have over 81 years of experience in national security. We believe that we are well positioned to start a company offering personal security services such as route analysis, observation skills, situational awareness, evasive and tactical driving, and surveillance detection to the intelligence community. And so we'd like to open it up to any questions that you may have. Sir.
Yeah, I have two. I'm sorry. I have two that are related. I'm curious as to how, on a government contract, you manage to earn 30 to 40% gross margin. And a related question, you talked about the market being defined by RFPs that you've seen now. If you're a competitive market and pursuing RFPs, even as a small business, if you're not being audited to the standard government rates, you're still in a competitive marketplace for trying to sell tradecraft back to the inventors of it. So I'm interested first in where your margins come from, and secondly, whether you're looking at a sole source market or a competitive market, and then I might have a follow-up question on that.
Okay, please. If I might address the first question, and that was with regard to the margins. What we did is, with the cost structure, I built out a program, a 2-week program, which would be initially all of our course offerings for that first week, and then the second week would focus on the evasive and tactical driving courses. So there you have a 2-week program. And then I went to the GSA schedule, and I actually looked up our competitors. And a lot of them have put on their website, on the GSA schedule, what their pricing structure is. Now, I have also have the benefit of having spent the last 5 years in government contracting, working for some of these companies. So when I'm reading what's written on GSA schedule, the description, I can understand intimately what that job description is. So if they describe a subject matter expert, if they talk about an intelligence analyst, or they talk about an operational support officer. So I think that I was able to take my understanding of what they put on GSA schedule and the prices that they're charging to the government, and then I took those and incorporated them into our model. So our model for the 2-week course, just for the first week initially, we had a program manager, a deputy program manager, we had a senior instructor, and then we had certified instructors, approximately 4, again, for this model. And then we also had role players, because there are street exercises that we would like to have. So with that, this is how we came out with those margins. And this is based, again, on pricing that our competitors are already offering or charging the government for similar services that we're seeking to offer the government. But it's also based on assumption that such a request, a solicitation, would want a 2-week program as I've built it, as I've designed it.
And on a fixed price basis rather than CPFF, where you'd be working direct labor rates and allowable margins.
I'm not familiar with CPFF. What is that?
Cost plus fixed fee.
Okay. Now, this is something, in my 5 years of working in government contracting, I did have 6 months working in business development and working contracts. I wrote proposals, I managed proposals, and I'm by no means an expert. I know enough about it that we would actually hire somebody to help us with that. I do not know how to write a cost proposal. That is something that we would also seek to have supplemented. And I am aware, though, that there are independent contractors that you can hire that work on proposals, that write them. They also have independent contractors that have clearances, so they can also write classified contracts. We've engaged an attorney and an accountant already, and both of these firms are well-positioned also in this market space, providing services to other government contractors. They also offer support in terms of developing proposals. So this is something that we would take, and these are services that we would ask for them to help us with.
Thank you.
Did you have a follow-up question?
No, you've answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I have just a question about. I have a question about the. I saw that there were a number of RFPs. Are all of those RFPs for local training in Virginia, Maryland, or are they on site?
Great question. No, they're not.
We have the ability to move all of this training to the client site if that's where they desire it. We have the facilities that I mentioned at ORT, so we can do it at your site or our site. Doesn't matter.
So I guess the issue is you're looking at your very small management team, and now let's say they want you to go to Iraq to train people, or I don't know. By on site, I meant not California or not New Jersey, but probably overseas. How will that impact on your management ability to maintain quality, oversee what's being done, and so forth, if they're 10,000 miles away?
Excuse me. To that point, with regard to the solicitations that I referenced, most of them were on client site. Some they actually sought that the company provide the facilities. They were both overseas. For example, Department of State, 85% of that solicitation was overseas, and then the remainder was domestic. And then it was the contiguous U.S. states, so domestic across the U.S. The others were just on their own facilities. ORT, as we mentioned, we're partnering with, and we could utilize their facilities. We can also use the government's facilities, which again is customary in this market space. The other third alternative is that we would rent space. So facility rental fees, that would also impact our cost structure if in the event that we actually have to provide those facilities ourselves. And I don't know that I answered all of your
I think my question
question.
is more from a management quality maintenance point of view, which I know is very important because you mentioned it. How do you do that now if you're in 20 locations around the world, or even in the U.S., let's say?
We
How
can't
would you
do that yet.
That's a large reason for the
So you wouldn't-
certification of the trainers and that sort of thing.
Okay.
We want to make sure that these are top-notch quality people that we send out.
What we can do is we can, for those solicitations, and particularly the one for Department of State, even though it was put out in November, it was delayed, and then it's actually going to be awarded in June of this year. So what we've discussed that we could do with that one, in fact, any of those, is actually find out who was awarded the contract. Determining who was awarded the contract, then we contact that company, and we introduce ourselves as AEC. We're a small company, small business, but we do have the capability to offer some of the capacity. We're in no means in any position to actually pursue one of these contracts on our own right now. That's where we aspire to be.
So your plan says 700,000 of revenue, 7 programs.
Excuse me?
Seven programs, was that about
That
right?
was 7 programs.
That's 14 weeks of capacity. So just give me some feeling like, what is your total capacity at the end of the first year? Let's say at a run rate, could you get up to a $2 million run rate?
No.
I mean, so 100,000 a quarter. What's the kind of measure you would have in your mind?
Okay.
And then how would you increase that capacity as you went forward into year 2? 'Cause I'm not really getting a sense of what the scalability of the business is as you move forward.
Okay. Actually, moving forward, we do need to take a measured pace. I should digress for a
I
minute.
guess what's the rate limiting resource? Is it the certified trainers?
It would,
Is
well, to that point, it
Yeah.
would be. Yes, we need to identify trainers. We've already identified 4 trainers that we could approach right now, and then with standing up AEC, offer them positions. Dick knows them intimately, he knows their background, and so they have the qualifications that we would be seeking. The certification, that's something we've identified a company that it's an organization, the Academy of Security Executives and Trainers, and we would like to have all of our trainers certified by them, and this is in delivery of security training. So we would actually need to ramp up, identify the trainers, get them certified, and we would also try to work with that organization.
I guess what I'm really getting to is I'm trying to figure out what the unit of production is. Is the unit of production a certified trainer, so as you grow, you have 1, 2, 3, 4? Or is it course load? I mean, so you see what I'm saying? I'm trying to say, like, what's the kind of incremental unit of capacity that you're adding, and what does that get you as you move forward?
It's, right now, the way these solicitations come out, they vary completely. And just in 1 year, it could be for an offering of 50, in the case of the Department of State solicitation, they have training classes that are running over 200 days per year and up to 11 course runnings at the same time.
So 200 days
We
a year
don't have the
is
capacity for that.
basically every workday in a year, right?
Almost.
Yeah, basically.
But 200 days in a year for some people in this, and perhaps you know it as well, but 200 isn't a bad thing because there's a lot of folks in the intelligence community, they work every day and they work long days. So 200 isn't such a bad thing. But we're not looking to put an employee to work for 200 days consistently. To your point about the capacity, we have to start small. The model that I built was just based on assumption of 7 programs. And that would take us to 718 if we
Let
landed.
me put it another way. Let's say I'm a contracting officer, and Kate, I want to give you a $2 million contract
Okay.
today.
Okay.
And you go, if I was going to do that, I would need to do X, Y, Z.
Okay.
What would the X, Y, Z be?
XYZ is, I need to, all right, you're telling me $2 million. What I would like to know is, I want to read your statement of work. I actually want to know, when are you delivering those training courses? So if it's something that's spread out over the year, then that's something that I can do. Because
Right.
as I said, we have, the 2 of us, we could actually both step into the role as trainers. That would impact management, because then I'm not staying back on the business side. We've already identified 4 people that we'd like to bring on board. We know people in the market space, and so we could actually pitch other people to join our company. So we could, depending on what you're asking us to do, we could then address those training programs initially. And then the ones that you have staggered throughout the rest of the year, because they're in the rest of the year, we're in a position where we can continue to identify new talent and get them ready to train.
Any final questions?
First off, nice presentation.
Thank you.
Am I to understand that, okay, is the government pretty much your client over the private sector?
Initially, yes, and that's
Okay.
just because of our background and doing what we know and leveraging our personal networks and also understanding I'm sorry to use the word intimately again, but we really do understand how it works. Not that we know everything, but we do also recognize that there is a need in the private sector. So we do also want to branch out in the private sector. We were looking at markets, industries where there's high value cargo that's being transited. So that could be banking, that's also pharmaceuticals within their supply chain, and then also oil and gas. So we think that there's overlap, and we'd like to offer our services in those industries. And ideally, we could do this simultaneously because we also recognize that government doesn't necessarily pay immediately, although government does always pay. Private sector, while they may pay immediately, they also could go bankrupt and then they can't pay. So again, to take care of the revenue streams, we'd like to approach both markets, but predominantly it would be the intelligence community.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we're out of time. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.